Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Another look at the upcoming Inoue versus TJ Doheny fight. Inoue picking TJ may be a step back, but not an affront, according to Lance Pugmire at Boxing Scene. Inoue isn't pleasing everyone with his decision to take a showcase fight against veteran TJ Doheny September 3rd in Tokyo. But the 4-division and undisputed super bantamweight champion hasn't committed a moral sin. That was the consensus among the Tuesday panel on ProBox TV's Deep Waters, when former welterweight champion Paulie Malignaggi argued you can't just continue pulling big-name opponents out of a factory conveyor belt. Only so many exist. Inoue wants to stay busy. It's literally what I said maybe a week or so ago, that if the goal is for Inoue to fight 3 times this calendar year instead of just 2, one of those fights is going to be a showcase fight. The fiercest argument to that point comes from unbeaten Inoue's mandatory challenger via the WBA, Akhmadaliev, who feels jilted by a journeyman in Doheny, who hasn't fought for a belt in 5 years. Akhmadaliev's manager, Vadim Kornilov, told Boxing Scene on Tuesday that his former unified super bantamweight champion is the worthiest opponent for Japan's Inoue, following Team Inoue's push to create a May bout against Luis Neri, who had been banned indefinitely from fighting in Japan over a performance-enhancing substance-positive test. Instead, Inoue is most likely going to skip Akhmadaliev entirely, taking on IBF mandatory Sam Goodman in December before moving on to the featherweight division next year, according to promoter Bob Arum. Yeah, well, that's according to Bob. The word out of Japan is that Inoue doesn't plan on moving up to featherweight in a hurry. He said he's going to stay at 122 until he feels ready, and he wants to fight Sam Goodman. He wants to fight MJ Akhmadaliev. We talked about that in a previous video. Arum previously said Akhmadaliev doesn't possess the name recognition to make the bout a must-happen event. Malignaggi is fine with that, saying Inoue wants to stay busy, we want to see him. Nicknamed the Monster, the popular Inoue drew 55,000 people to the Tokyo Dome in May, overcoming a first-round knockdown to starch Neri by the 6th round. Bob probably wants Naoya Inoue to move up in weight because he has 2 of the 4 champions at that weight, and that would give him a reason to bring Naoya Inoue back to America. The issue is, those champions don't have any more name value than Akhmadaliev does. Let's not pretend that either Rafael Espinoza or Luis Lopez have legions upon legions of fans here in America. They don't. They're good fighters, solid champions. Some people know them, but they ain't got much more name value than Akhmadaliev. He's the monster. People want to see the monster. Veteran trainer Teddy Atlas said on Deep Waters, it doesn't matter if Godzilla chomps the head off of someone smaller, he's got an entire country behind him. Not everyone does. This bout is an easy one. Former 140-pound title holder Chris Algieri said that fighting the 37-year-old Doheny, who has boosted his brand in Japan by posting 3 consecutive knockout victories there, might be a bit of a reprieve, a step back, although Doheny is a former world champion himself. I'll give Inoue a pass. He can fight less than an ultimate legend, as he has been, Algieri said. Does it have to do with the fact that Inoue got dropped the last time out? Do they want to make sure everything is right? Right the ship a little bit before they make the next step up? Maybe. This is not the fight that I expected, but I'm not mad at it.
All right, Chris. I'll be your Huckleberry.
Let's entertain the notion that Team Inoue want to hit the gas a bit because he did get dropped in the first round of the Neri fight. Never mind that he dominated the rest of it and stopped the guy. Beat him easy, outside of the knockdown. But I'll be your Huckleberry. Let's say they do want to take things easy for their next fight. Is that the end of the world? I mean, this is a guy who literally fought in a tournament. You can't get many American fighters to participate in a tournament. How many of the somebodies at 168 didn't want to fight in the World Boxing Super Series? Inoue did, and Inoue won. That's how committed he is to fighting in the fights that he needs to fight in. Wins a tournament, subsequently goes on to unify the entire bantamweight division, moves up in weight, the super bantamweight division, becomes undisputed in 2 fights. Just 2 fights. Commitment. That if here and now he wants to take his foot off the gas a bit, I'm okay with that. Chris says he is, so is Paulie Malignaggi. But Vadim Kornilov and Team Akhmadaliev aren't. Well, listen. I'm not proposing that they skip MJ altogether. They'll get around to him, but that's the point, isn't it? If you didn't want to be subject to somebody else's schedule, if you didn't want to be at the whim of someone else, well, maybe you shouldn't have lost to Marlon Tapales. Maybe if you would have still had your 2 alphabet titles, he knew he would have fought you by now. He would have fought you already. I think he would have beat you.
I think he's going to.
No, for me, it's not about whether or not Inoue will ever fight MJ. I think he's gonna fight MJ, but he's gonna fight MJ on his time, not MJ's. You were a super bantamweight champion long before he moved up. You had plenty of opportunities to unify this division. That didn't happen. It doesn't matter why.
It's done.
Can't change the past and you can't rewrite history. So here and now, for him having moved up and unified this division in record time, he's not subject to your demands, your time frame.
But I'm supposed to all of a sudden fly off the handle and crucify him for squeezing in a TJ Doheny fight in between now and December.
Stop it.
If you didn't want to end up waiting, you shouldn't have lost the fight. You shouldn't have lost to Marlon Tapales.
It is what it is. That in the amount of time that Inoue is getting things done that you should have got done before he got there, yeah, he deserves some grace, some amnesty.
Patience.
Because I do think he's going to fight MJ, just not on MJ's time.
Or Matchroom's dime. When you get the fight, it'll be on his.
Till then, quit your crying. Upstairs in junior middleweight news, I'm sure most of you have heard by now that Jermell Charlo has been stripped of the last remaining title he held in the junior middleweight division, the Ring Magazine title. He's already forfeited the alphabet titles, all the alphabet titles he held. The WBA, the WBC, the WBO, and the IBF. In fact, the only designation of any kind, the only title, as it were, that he might still be in possession of is lineal status. Because he didn't get beat at 154 as lineal champion, he got beat at 168.
By Canelo.
So if you wish to still recognize Jermell as lineal champion at 154, you can, but I highly doubt he will ever return there. No, I told you guys well over a year ago, right after the Brian Castano fight, that would be the last time Jermell competes as a junior middleweight. That in spite of the reports at the time, he wasn't going to fight Tim Tszyu. He had no intention of fighting Tim Tszyu. And that opportunity to fight Canelo, it came around right on time for him to skip out on Tszyu and fight in a bigger fight for bigger money.
So what happens when a lineal champion at a weight is not unseated as lineal champion at a weight? What happens?
Well, assuming that Jermell never comes back to 154, and I don't think he's going to, what usually happens is the number 1 and number 2 guys fight each other, and based on who wins, he is the new lineal champion. It's basically the reset button.
And if the number 1 and number 2 guys don't fight each other?
There ain't no lineal. There ain't no lineal champion if the number 1 and number 2 guys in the current rank standings don't fight each other. And there won't be one until they do. It'll stay that way.
So that goes.
The dramatic highs and lows of boxing. It was in May of 2022, I think it was, that Jermell Charlo became that division's undisputed champion and the first undisputed junior middleweight champion in the 4-belt era. Jermell was riding high, and in his own way, he made history just so that he could disgrace himself in his very next fight with Canelo Alvarez.
Why is it a disgrace to lose to Canelo? He's undisputed at 168. Jermell jumped up 2 weight classes for that fight.
It's a disgrace because you've been calling out Canelo Alvarez for years, using his name for clout to get people talking about you. Hell, that same year he was calling out Canelo, only so that when you actually get the opportunity to fight him, you don't fight him. You run.
You didn't want the fight because you thought you could win the fight. You just showed up for a check. And that's how you fought. Quote unquote fought. If you even want to call it that. I call it running.
The fine line that separates creating space to get punches off and running in the sport of boxing, or what the fans like to call running. Well, if all you're doing is moving, if all you're doing is creating space and putting distance between yourself and the other guy without mounting some kind of offense, counters, setting traps, that all you're really doing is trying to stay out of the pocket.
You're running.
You're not trying to fight. You're not trying to win the fight. You're trying to survive. All you're really there to do is not get knocked out and then get paid.
And that's a disgrace. From the guy who spent all that time calling out Canelo years calling out Canelo.
How many times do I tell you that a lot of these people that call out Canelo, they don't call him out because they think they can beat him. They're just showing up for a check. And that's what came across from Jermell Charlo's performance that night. It was a disgrace and poor taste.
The fans, the ones that are paying to be there and the ones buying the pay-per-view at home, they're doing so to see a fight. You didn't want to fight. You just wanted to survive.
And that's a disgrace. And so the junior middleweight division has moved on from the reign of Jermell Charlo. He's been stripped of the last remaining title he held, the Ring Magazine title, due to inactivity, that he hasn't fought as a junior middleweight in 2 years. Over 2 years.
I don't think he's coming back to 154 if he ever comes back. If he does, I think he'll come back at 160.
That guy was at 154 for a very long time. I don't even think he can make that weight healthy anymore.
The show must go on.
And the show does go on. Newly crowned IBF champion Bachram Murtazaliev took to his social media. He said, "I'm on my way back to Los Angeles. Let's go, whoever is ready to challenge me for my title. I see that there's still no announcement for Spence versus Fundora. I don't know why you guys are taking that long. Errol, maybe you're lacking confidence after the Crawford fight. If so, let me fight Fundora and then challenge me for 3 belts. But if problem on Fundora's side, you can come fight me for the IBF. Or anyone else. I'm tired of waiting. Anyone can get it. We're not getting any younger. Let's go. Didn't take too long. Ellie Sekback, there's a reason why Charlo was avoiding me all these years. Ask them why these guys are avoiding me now."
I don't think anybody's avoiding Bachram.
So, when Bachram was over there at the PBC, and he was taking all those step-aside deals, they had him fighting on the non-televised portions of their shows. People didn't see him, and that's why now, even though he's a champion, nobody really knows who he is or how he fights.
I don't think anybody's afraid of Bachram. I don't think anybody's avoiding him.
Can't avoid somebody if you don't really know who they are. No, they likely have more familiar faces, familiar targets, bigger names for bigger money on their minds. That's what it is. But what's noteworthy is that Bachram doesn't have a dance partner. Bachram is free.
He wants to fight Sebastian.
On a premise that the Spence fight has not been officially announced yet. We know that there's supposed to be a plan to put Spence in the ring with Sebastian Fundora, but I maintain a healthy level of skepticism, as Errol Spence will not have fought in over a year's time, coming off a devastating loss, a crushing knockout loss to Terence Crawford, to move up in weight with a new corner since he parted ways with his career-long trainer, Derek James, to fight a 6'5" southpaw.
It is a little hard to imagine that Errol's going to actually do this, but Errol is the guy who says he doesn't believe in tune-up fights.
Sounds like Bachram Murtazaliev doesn't believe that fight is going to happen. And on that premise, he's calling out Sebastian.
He wants to unify.
I'm not against it, but what's noteworthy is that Bachram is free. Bachram don't have a dance partner right now. And so yesterday, news broke that former champion Tszyu, who's on the bounce, is in the process of scheduling his next fight. What could be a fight with Erickson Lubin billed as an IBF title eliminator. I'm thinking to myself, if Bachram Murtazaliev is free,
right,
and he doesn't have a dance partner, and there's no mandatory installed, why don't Tim fight Bachram straight away? Skip the foreplay.
Make that guy an offer.
He's not under orders from the IBF. He's free to fight, doesn't have a dance partner. You want a way back to a title? There it is. Instead of fighting Erickson Lubin, if you want to fight that guy so bad, you can fight him afterwards.
Important particulars.
A couple of days ago, there was a blurb that Tszyu was about to announce his next fight, and it might be in America. Thank God that they came to their senses, and it's going to be in Australia, because Tim draws well in Australia, well enough that you shouldn't travel to America to fight Terrell Gausha in Minneapolis or Keith Thurman, the fated husk of Keith Thurman, which subsequently became Sebastian Fundora in Vegas. These are not big names. These are not big fights.
Those guys don't draw.
If you're gonna leave your home base, your native Australia, to come to America to fight somebody, let it be a Terence Crawford, or maybe a Virgil Ortiz. Let it be for a big fight, but not for the stuff they've had Tim doing. It doesn't make sense.
So now it looks like they finally came to their senses, and they're bringing the targets over to them.
Who are the targets? Well, Erickson Lubin seems to be the front runner for the fight, but there's also a blurb about it being Jesus Ramos.
I'm okay with either fight.
Though I still think that if Bachram Murtazaliev is free, you should skip the both of them and just fight him straight away. After all, if this is an IBF title eliminator, then all it really is a segue to fight Bachram. Why do that when you can fight him straight away?
Whatever.
So Tim's potential opponent options range from Erickson Lubin to Jesus Ramos. I'm okay with either fight, but stylistically, Jesus would make for a more fun fight to watch than Erickson. Erickson is going to try to move and punch. He's going to try to box. He doesn't want to brawl. Whereas Jesus, he's going to step into his punches, try to put them together.
Erickson Lubin some months ago, quote unquote, beat Jesus Ramos. I thought Jesus did enough to win the fight. I thought he should have got the decision. They gave it to Erickson.
You will notice that Jesus Ramos and Erickson Lubin still have ties to the PBC, and because Tim is looking at them in some ways, he might still have ties to the PBC. He might. That this fight, even though it's going down in Australia as a no-limit promotion, might be broadcasted here in America by way of the PBC.
Via Amazon Prime, and hopefully as a free fight.
And not a pay-per-view. You can't really think of this as being a PBC show because PBC is not at the helm of promotion. No Limit is. It's their promotion.
Neither Al Heyman or Louis DeCubas or Tom Brown are in charge of this show. They're not the ones promoting it. It's No Limit promoting it. And No Limit was involved with Tim long before the PBC came into it. So it's not a PBC show, but via the PBC, we might be able to see it on Amazon.
The PBC is supposed to be planning a non-pay-per-view show next month in August, headlined by Caleb Plant. I'm going to assume this would be their second non-pay-per-view show.
Their show?
When the year is out, if they're lucky, they will have done around 6 to 7 shows this entire year. Initially, they said they were going to do 12 to 14.
That's down from 36.
Back when Fox and Showtime were in the picture, they used to do about 36 shows in a single calendar year. Now they'll be lucky if they can do 6 to 7 in a calendar year.
They've only done 3 so far, and we're 7 months into this year. The August show would make 4 shows in 8 months.
They're operating at a reduced capacity.
But they still seem to be involved with Tim Tszyu. To some degree they are, because Erickson Lubin and Jesus Ramos are PBC fighters.
It's back to Australia for Tim, back to the home base. I'd wager that the money they were hoping they could make in America on that pay-per-view, the money they were hoping to make, well, it's not what they hoped. It wasn't, because if it were, they'd be doing another fight here in America. If the money were good and the buys were right.
You could do a better gate, a much better gate, and better buys doing the fight in your native Australia than wasting your time out here.
And the fight would get better promotion because the PBC, in case you haven't noticed, they're not really promoting these shows they're doing. What little shows they are doing, there's not much of a push on Amazon.
Remember what Javante said ahead of the Frank Martin fight? That the promotion for the fight was ass?
That's what I'm talking about. So it's a good thing that Tim Tszyu's team came to their senses and brought the opponents to them, like they should.
You're the draw. They're not.